Welcome to LG Path Lab's monthly pathology webinar series. We have Dr. Vaishali Deshmukh with us today to speak on endocrinology of COVID and its effect on diabetes, thyroid, and obesity. Dr. Vaishali is a leading endocrinologist in Pune in India. She is the principal investigator for various trials in diabetes and endocrinology and is chief medical investigator for the government project called Drug Compliance Monitoring. She is a keen philanthropist and is involved with many charities. Welcome, Dr. Vaishali, to LG Path Lab webinars.
Hello, Dr. Lemke. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. It's my pleasure to interact with the audience as well as yourself. And I'm glad that you've selected this topic. I'll be covering this topic on various points, and I'll be talking about COVID-19 with endocrine connection of this disease and diabetes and COVID-19. We all know that it's an unholy synergism. Type 1 diabetes and its relation to COVID. What about type 2 diabetes? What about thyroid and COVID-19? What about lab abnormalities? And finally, we'll come to a summarizing these kind of findings in our patients. So I'm sure all of us know that worldwide the COVID-19 has been creating a havoc over, and you can see that nearly 93 million cases worldwide. But if you have to see the death rates, the maximum death rates have been in diabetic subjects. So you can see that the prevalence of severe COVID in ventilation and ICU cases were maximum in the diabetic subjects. Similar findings were also recorded in India. Nearly 50% of diabetes patients were hospitalized due to COVID-19. So you can see that in amongst the COVID hospitalization, nearly half the population was suffering from diabetes. In Pune, from where I come from, we nearly have about 3.6% of India cases, which is a huge population. And 20% of the COVID deaths that have occurred in our city were attributed solely to diabetes. So it's definitely a deadly combination to have diabetes with COVID. And why do we talk so? Because we know that all viruses are known to affect the endocrine glands. So you can see that if you have to see where COVID affects, it affects each and every endocrine gland in the body, right from the pituitary, the testicle, the bone, the pancreas, the fat, the adrenal gland, and thyroid. So you have different manifestations involving each and every gland. And we see majorly what we have been seen across is in relation to diabetes. So we will be talking on these as we go ahead in our presentation. Second important point to understand is that COVID-19 therapy has been targeting many endocrine targets. So you can see that melatonin, which is called the sleep hormone or the rhythm hormone, is one of the targets of therapy. Oxytocin analogs are known to be one of the targets of therapy. Then we know that drugs like DPP-4 inhibitors, GLP-1 analogs, and ACE2 inhibitors, which are commonly used in diabetics, also have a favorable benefit on COVID. And then there are search for newer targets like estrogens and statins, which are known to have some benefit on the COVID disease in terms of a favorable. You can see that most of the COVID-19 cases have occurred in males because testosterone, rather estrogen is more protective to occurrence of COVID vis-a-vis presence of testosterone and androgens. So we've seen that male outnumbers as compared to female as far as disease occurrence is there. So what is the relation of angiotensin enzyme 2 in diabetes? So we use a lot of ACE inhibitors and ARBs in diabetics, and you can see that the common pathway for entry of COVID-19 involves the ACE enzyme. So this is where the spike protein attaches. So it was initially thought that ACE inhibitors might actually worsen the occurrence of the disease by enhancing the attachment. But later on, it was proven that it is actually known to be beneficial and protective in preventing the spread of the virus. And that is why ACE inhibitors are very well recommended now in all patients with diabetes, including those with COVID-19. Now, what is important is that we need to see that there is a lot of overlap between endocrine symptoms and COVID-19. So you see that a lot of our endocrine patients with diabetes come with fatigue, they come with myalgias, arthralgias, and overall weight loss and malaise, but which has been commonly reported in COVID-19 as the primary presentation. So we have come across patients with diabetes who just have malaise and myalgia and fatigue and may not come with fever and cough. So that is one thing which we need to suspect, that such patients should be evaluated for diabetes, and vice versa, that diabetic suspected patients should be evaluated for COVID also in that scenario. So coming to what is the association between type 2 diabetes and COVID-19, you see that this is a data from the Diabetic Research Journal, and it has shown that this was one of the studies, initial studies, where they have seen that 199 hospitalization of COVID, of which 76 were diabetic patients as compared to the non-diabetic population. They have seen that the date of the duration of admission and stay was much lesser in the diabetic patients, but they tend to develop more severe disease. So you can see fever, dyspnea, fatigue was very common, and their levels of D-dimer, sugars, and WBC count and bilirubin and urea was much higher as compared to the non-diabetic population. The oxygen saturation was much lower, the lymphocyte count was much lower, and death rates were very high as compared to the, you can see nearly 3 times the non-diabetic population. So death rate was higher, duration of stay was higher, severity of disease was higher, and the markers were much higher in these patients. So one needs to understand that diabetics need to be treated critically and aggressively when we are diagnosing COVID-19. So why is this combination a deadly combination? So you can understand that COVID acts through two pathways. One is the inflammatory and an indirect pathways, which precipitates a pathway of coagulopathy and thrombosis. And then there is a direct injury which occurs to the lungs and the heart and the GI. So you can have diabetics who are already compromised in these aspects. We also know that diabetes is a chronic inflammatory disorder. So there is a existent inflammation already in the body, and over and above, SARS-CoV is known to increase the inflammatory response in these subjects. So this is what creates an unholy synergism between diabetes and COVID-19. So diabetics tend to have a long-term immune system imbalance. They have metabolic syndrome, and of course there is an association of obesity with diabetes. So this is what makes person with diabetes more prone for a pro-inflammatory cytokine response in the form of raise in the interleukin 1 and interleukin 6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. So you can see that both these diseases, one is an acute inflammatory disease and one is a chronic inflammatory disease, and both of these worsens the outcome in the real sense, and both of these are hazardous to the endothelium. This causes endothelial dysfunction, and that is why the risk of sudden deaths and risk of mortality is high in the combination of both these diseases. So you can see that SARS-CoV is known to cause beta cell damage and cytokine storm, and this beta cell damage is known to actually present with new onset diabetes, and we are seeing a lot of new cases coming up with a presentation like a insulin dependent diabetes coming with ketoacidosis and are diagnosed for the first time during COVID presentation. Those who have already had diabetes have metabolic worsening of parameters, and then there is a factor of stress and other factors adding up to inadmission hyperglycemia. All this is known to have worsening when obesity comes into picture, coagulation pathway defects come into picture, when hyperglycemic emergencies come into picture, when age is advanced, when there is associated cardiovascular comorbidity and renal comorbidity. So you can see that multiple factors eventually lead to a poor outcome in diabetics. So the importance of this concept is that all diabetics should be very careful. They should be careful in the sense they should be able to diagnose and suspect the illness as early as possible and get them treated as early as possible, as aggressively as possible, and they should not take the disease very lightly. So there are few questions to answer. One is, are diabetics more prone to COVID-19? Are they likely to have more severe form of disease? Are outcomes worse in those with diabetes? What are the mechanisms in diabetics that worsen COVID-19? Is there a need to change the diabetes treatment if they develop COVID-19? And what special precautions should diabetic take to prevent COVID-19? So this is what each of us as diabetics or as diabetes treating doctors need to understand. So the first question is, are diabetics more prone to COVID-19? So we know that individuals with diabetes are susceptible to all infections because they have a poor immunity. So they are more prone for lower respiratory tract infection. But however, there has been no evidence to suggest that people with diabetes are more prone to COVID-19 than the general population. So it is found that the risk of infection to diabetes versus non-diabetes is nearly the same. What is actually different is that the worsening of diabetes and outcomes is much faster and higher in patients who have got COVID-19. So person with diabetes when they do get COVID-19, there is an increased risk of developing advanced stage of disease. This has been proven with the Chinese data, and they've found that nearly 20% of intensive care admissions have been due to diabetes. Then 2/3 of deaths in Italy were due to diabetes, and even in India, maximum death reports were with diabetic cases. So you can see that diabetes is an important comorbidity. It's like adding fuel to fire when a patient has diabetes with COVID-19. So what is important to understand here that if you have to see the case fatality rate with the pre-existing comorbid conditions. So if a person has cardiovascular disease prior, there is a 10% chance of mortality. When he has diabetes, the chance is 7%. When there is chronic respiratory disease like asthma, it is 6%. When it is hypertension, it is 6%. Cancer patients have a 5% risk. So what it tells us that any cardiovascular underlying disease is a risk factor when we talk about COVID-19 occurrence. So it becomes a vicious cycle of diabetes and COVID. So you see poor immunity causing COVID-19, COVID-19 damaging the beta cell, causing diabetes, and this whole cycle continues. So what is the link between sugar and hospital outcome then? So you can see that the glucose, when there is a hyperglycemic state, we know that immunity is disturbed. We know that the patient is prone for ketosis. We know that there are a lot of oxidative pathway which are damaging to the body, and we know that there is a lot of thrombosis occurring. All this is known to cause injury to the body organs, end organ damage, lot of ischemia and infarction. I'm sure you must have heard that a lot of patients die due to heart attacks post-COVID. And these are mainly due to the combination of these effects, and this leads to prolonged hospital stay, disability, and death. So then coming to what is the effect of COVID on diabetes medications, so and vice versa. So COVID medications, do they hamper diabetes? So these are the drugs which have been used for COVID all over the world. You can see chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine are also known as anti-diabetic agents. So they are known to lower glucose, and the antivirals are known to be notorious in causing hyperglycemia. So when you are using chloroquine derivatives, there is chance of hypoglycemia, while lopinavir and remdesivir are known to worsen glycemia, and the MABs, the antibodies, are known to worsen the glycemic status. Similarly, the use of steroids as immunomodulators is known to worsen the occurrence of diabetes in these subjects. So a lot of issues are there in terms of therapeutics of treating COVID-19 in diabetic subjects. So how do you really think of management? Now, management, to give you just a superficial guideline, you have 4 categories of patients. One is asymptomatic or a pre-symptomatic category with no symptom, those with mild illness who do not have hypoxia, moderate illness with hypoxia and or require O2 management, and severe critical illness which require hospitalization and critical care treatment for various reasons. So asymptomatic patients, I think this is the commonest population we are coming across in India, that the patients are not very grossly symptomatic, but do have issues in management of diabetes. So here we need to understand that most of the home quarantine diabetic COVID patients need to target their HbA1c below 7%. Those with comorbidities can target it a bit higher. Then glycemic targets around 150 should be the aim. You need to watch for hypoglycemia, especially if they have been using hydroxychloroquine or dexamethasone withdrawal. Then they need to be well hydrated, drinking a lot of water, fluids. They need to have a good nutrition, need to take additional vitamin D, zinc, and vitamin C. They need to be on aspirin therapy because, as I said, thrombotic pathways are very active and ACE inhibitors need to be continued. So if you can follow these guidelines, most of the times the illness is not following any grave course and most of the patients are able to recover well. Now, what about the anti-diabetic medications, and do diabetic patients need to change them, or which are favorable? So we have different categories of drugs which we use in diabetes. So as of now, there are no recommendations, but metformin is usually avoided with a fear of lactic acidosis and fatigue. Then glitazones usually are avoided because there is a chance of volume overload and affecting the lungs in a not a favorable way. GLP-1 receptor agonists are known to increase the chances of vomiting and dehydration and appetite reduction. So these are not the preferred agents in diabetic, but when it comes to DPP-4 inhibitors, then they have shown in some study data to decrease the entry of coronavirus, especially in the MERS-CoV in the Gulf countries. So it has been recommended that DPP-4s can be continued in these patients. So all the gliptins are safe to be used in these patients. Then SGLT2 inhibitors are known to worsen dehydration and ketosis, so should be avoided. Modern sulfonylureas can be used, hydroxychloroquine can be used for therapy. So you have an array of drugs which are available for treating diabetic subjects with COVID. And you actually, when it comes to critical cases, it is necessary to put them on insulin. Now, if what is important is that it is not necessary that person with diabetes who have milder symptoms will remain mild. They tend to deteriorate rapidly and severely. So it is better to be overcautious when we are treating patients with diabetes because they can suddenly worsen overnight. So they need a careful watch and careful monitoring throughout the course of illness, especially the day 10 to day 14 of the illness is very crucial because these are the time when people land up with most of these complications. I would not go into the details of managing more severe cases, but what is important here is that they need to have a good critical care support, a good nutritional management, and all the hospitalized cases need to be evaluated for new onset diabetes. So everybody should be evaluated whether they were diabetic in the past or not. And insulin protocols individualized for every hospital and every IPD settings is a must. So what precautions should a diabetic patient take if he doesn't want to get affected with COVID? So best thing is to have a better control and have a good glycemic control so that immunity is good. Frequent monitoring is required. If you are a cardiac patient or a renal patient, you need to reduce the complication rate by proper consults with a cardiologist and a nephrologist and proper change in medication. Nutrition is an important aspect, keeping active with exercise and getting yourself self-quarantine as soon as you're detected positive, especially if you're a mild case, is very important because you can have a sudden worsening if you're not taking adequate rest and adequate hydration. So you need to keep yourself monitored all throughout the days of your quarantine. And one interesting fact that we have seen is that vaccination of diabetic patients, especially those recommended by the American Diabetic Association and the ESD, where influenza vaccines were given, pneumococcal vaccines were given, all these vaccines lessened the chance of COVID-19 in our patients. So all my patients who have received vaccines last year are much more protected of future infections. So we don't know how many pandemics and epidemics we are going to face. It is better that we get our diabetic patients vaccinated for the recommended vaccines at least. And thereafter, you can, I'm sure COVID vaccination is in everywhere, and definitely diabetics, especially elderly, should definitely go in for COVID vaccination. There are additional concerns with change in the whole. People have seen a sudden change in their work and lifestyle all throughout the year. Work adjustments are important. Travel preparedness, especially while traveling in flight. Workplace facilities need to be changed, and job change and telemedicine, all these are in place. So there are a lot of concerns in diabetic patients when we are thinking about all these activities, because their eating time changes, their working time changes, exercise time changes. So you need to adapt and keep your routine healthy even in these changes. This is a few mention about the diabetogenic potential of COVID-19. You can see that there is a data in the NEGM which says that SARS-CoV has a diabetogenic potential, which makes a person ketosis prone, and it manifests like a diabetic ketoacidosis, and the course is actually not known. So new onset diabetes is entity which has been reported after COVID-19. Then coming to type 1 diabetes. Now this is a major data from UK itself, and you can see that majority of the patients who presented with new onset type 1 diabetes in children during the COVID-19 pandemic. So there is probably a thought that the exposure to this virus has known to increase the onset of new onset of type 1 diabetes in UK. Similar data has been put forth in Germany also, and in Germany they found that there is a strong diabetogenic effect, and you can say that the incidence rate of type 1 diabetes, you can see that there is a gradual increase, and the maximum reported case occurring in the year 2020, and this is probably attributed to SARS-CoV. And this is again data which shows that there are a higher proportion of severe DKA patients presenting to the casualty, especially when they were diagnosed to have type 1 diabetes newly, and the majority of them presented with a ketoacidosis, and this was statistically significant. So this has been mainly reported in European countries, and this needs to be looked for in children also. There is a specific affinity of the virus for pancreas and other endocrine organs, especially pancreas and thyroid are very commonly afflicted. That is what we are seeing. And this is in terms of related mortality in England. And you see that the population data says that overall, as compared to the overall population, the type 1 diabetes population, the death rates were higher. So mortality risk was higher in type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes vis-a-vis the non-diabetic population. So this was statistically significant, especially in the younger age groups and in the elderly. So both the spectrums of the ages were typically affected, and in hospital death when, due to COVID-19 was more in this diabetic population. So to summarize about diabetes, diabetics are not prone to COVID-19, but they are more severe and advanced in terms of disease. There is worsening hyperglycemia, new onset hyperglycemia, and uncontrolled diabetes. Mortality is nearly 2 to 3-fold higher. Glycemic control is of utmost importance, and attention to be given to BP control, anticoagulation, and antiplatelets in such patients. Then few statements on obesity and COVID-19. As I told you that obesity is a additional comorbid factor, because again obesity is a chronic inflammatory disease. So here we are talking about increased viral shedding, increased viral load, chronic inflammation, presence of comorbidities, and a poor respiratory reserve. So all this is known to increase the damage to the you can say the lung as well as the immune system, and that is why they are more prone for cytokine storm. So mortality has been higher in obese patients also, who did not have diabetes also. So you can see that if the COVID-19 lockdown has also affected behavior of children and adults, and obesity has been a consequence also. And you can see that the food intakes were different, the weight gain was different, the lifestyle changed totally, the sleep time changed totally, the sports activity came down significantly. All this led to a surge of obesity. I'm sure we will be seeing a lot of obesity coming up this year once we see patients in our clinics. So we need to understand that there is a direct cause and relation effect of COVID-19 and obesity. And this study actually proves the fact that in communities where there were obese communities, they were at higher risk of COVID-19 deaths. So those with cities which had lot of obese population had more mortality as compared to the non-obese population. So then about thyroid function and COVID-19, I will just summarize it in one slide that first of all, we see a lot of sick euthyroid syndromes. So I would recommend that you don't test thyroid unless you suspect thyroid dysfunction in any patient with COVID, because there is a high chance that you will pick up sick euthyroid syndrome cases. The TSH abnormalities are very common. So what we need to do is we need to suspect. Most of our cases are coming with thyroiditis, a subacute thyroiditis, painful thyroiditis like manifestation. So it is what we call as post-infection thyroid disease, and they come with fever. They come with fever which is not responding to the COVID management. So they have been suffering from COVID-19. They recovered from that, and then they started with fever and neck pain, and then they were found to have thyroiditis. So I think the sequelae and the classic presentation and the neck pain confirms the diagnosis. Of course, lab parameters confirms this with a raised ESR, a raised CRP, and worsening thyroid function. Then there is lot of eye disease. Thyroid eye disease can be worsened in patients with COVID-19. And in patients with hypothyroidism, there is no significant change. So you don't really need to change the thyroid medications based on COVID occurrence. Most of the hypothyroid patients continue the same, but those who are at uncontrolled thyrotoxicosis, there is a risk of thyroid storm, so they need to be controlled as early as possible. But we need to be careful about neutropenia, because we all know that neutropenia is common even with COVID, and it is common with antithyroid agents. So both ways you need to be on a regular follow-up. And of course, most of them would prefer teleconsultation because of the risk of acquirement of infections. Then vitamin D and COVID-19. There is a lot of talk on vitamin D and COVID-19, and we know that vitamin D is a protective hormone as far as immunity is considered. So it was found that those who had low vitamin D had a worsening COVID outcome, and that is why supplementation with vitamin D is one of the strategies to help in improving their immunity status of all the subjects with COVID-19. And we recommend that even for protection, you take an adequate amount of vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C. So all these are known to help the immune response. So a few words on the lab parameters. I am sure that all of the pathologists across the world must be seeing this. So these are the major lab abnormalities that we come across, and what is the significance of those lab abnormalities? So we see in the complete blood count, you can see a WBC count which is increased neutrophil count, a decreased lymphocyte and decreased platelet count. This may give you a super infection idea with a bacterial infection, or there can be a immune suppression or a coagulopathy setting in. Blood gases is an important aspect for critical care, oxygenation and management of ventilatory support. Then albumin can be decreased, implying liver function abnormality. All these parameters can be increased, showing liver injury or pulmonary injury. So LDH becomes an important parameter. Then you can have cardiac troponin, then D-dimer, prothrombin, procalcitonin, and C-reactive protein, ferritin, and cytokines. All these show a high procoagulant state or active coagulopathy, and there is chances of the cytokine storms are high when the interleukin 6 levels are rising. So if you are a pathologist or you are a patient suffering from COVID, and if you have these parameters, they can give you some clue as to how you are heading for in the course of the disease. So this is a pictorial representation of how SARS-CoV leads to infection over disease. Many recover, some can lead to death. Now, based on this, epidemiologically, the available tests are the RT-PCR and to see for antibodies. Then diagnosis is mainly based on RT-PCR. And based on the staging, the lab parameters that I showed you, are done to see where the prognostication of the disease goes. And to confirm the epidemiologic recovery, antibodies are commonly done in societies to see the overall herd immunity and the status of immunization. So these are the tests which actually are falling into two categories. One is diagnostic and second is prognostic. So you can see that mainly the CBC, the D-dimer, CRP, ESR, and LDH and liver functions indicate a diagnostic pathology, while prognostically you can see that the rise in these parameters gives us an idea this patient is likely to worsen, and these are candidates for antiviral and MABs and therapy. So most of the physicians and infectious disease specialists would be guided by these lab parameters, and that is what we need to be aware of. Of course, as pathologists or as physicians, we need to be aware that there are a lot of interferences and caution that can give rise to false positive and negative results. So if you are seeing patients like lupus and rheumatoid, you can get high acute phase responses, prothrombotic states with high D-dimer and fibrinogen, high immunoglobulin or polyclonal gammopathy. Then patients with high ANA titers and dialysis can give rise to falsely elevated or reduced responses. Additionally, there could be lab interferences. I don't need to go into the details of this. I'm sure all of you are aware of this, but you can see that a lot of proteins interfere, a lot of lipids interfere, a lot of supplements interfere. So biotin, especially most of the patients would be taking multivitamins, which has biotin. And even in patients with DIC, you can have certain issues coming up with diagnosing them in the laboratory. So you need to be aware of these interfering things. And of course, we have seen a lot of patients who come with a florid picture of pneumonia on the lung, and they have a COVID negative result with the RT-PCR. And you know that false negativity is very common. It's common when there is low viral load in the initial phase or in the final phase when there is a wipeout. So it is not mandatory that you will get a positive RT-PCR even with a florid COVID symptom. So one needs to be really very, you can say judgmental, and you can use your clinical judgment to identify the patients with COVID-19. So to summarize, lab medicine is crucial to early detection. Lab abnormalities can detect severe from the and they can differentiate from non-severe ones. And abnormal lab parameters reflect evolution of COVID-19 towards an unfavorable outcome. And lymphopenia and increased D-dimer and elevated LFTs imply a poor prognosis, suggesting high risk of fatality. So nothing in life is to be feared. It is only needed to be understood. I am sure that you must have understood by now that you don't need to worry and fear about COVID, but take proper care. And so be properly informed, be prepared, be smart, and be safe. So be ready to fight COVID-19, and I'm sure you'll.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vaishali, for your lovely presentation. And if you have any queries, if listeners have any queries, please leave your questions in the comment box, and Dr. Vaishali and I would try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nia, for your help. Thanks, Dr. Vaishali, again.
Thank you, Mian. Thank you, Plinky. Thank you so much.
Thank you.